appreciate. And we've put a range of financial and facilitation tools to make that a reality. So we decided then to collaborate with the African group of ambassadors who are based here in Egypt, as well as the government of Egypt, represented by the Ministry of Planning, Economic Development, and International Cooperation, to organize the first Focus Africa Trade and Investment Forum, to actually use it as an opportunity to mobilize various projects in the continent, throughout the continent, to ensure that we can actually pair those projects from various countries with investors that are based here in Egypt. Egypt has a lot of capacity in a number of areas, be it infrastructure, energy. I mean, some of you, you know that the Egyptians, since the time they built the pyramids, they've not stopped the construction. So they've got a lot of capacity that we've been tapping into to ensure that the rest of Africa also develops good infrastructure that is required to actually carry the trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Egypt is also very good in terms of energy, and we've been working with a number of companies here in Egypt to try and link them to the investment projects that are coming from other African countries. So we actually launched this Focus Africa Trade and Investment Forum as a key platform for the continent to actually promote investment between African countries and investors within the continent. We believe that this is actually a good way to facilitate inter-African trade. When an African country invests in another African country, that will actually create that sustainable trade through the production of goods that can actually be traded under the AFCFTA.
If you could take us through, Doctor, some of the strategies that were presented at Focus Africa that will be adopted to attract investment on the continent.
That's a good question, and this is what many people during the conference were always asking us to say, so what are the practical tools that are going to be put in place to attract foreign direct investment or Africa direct investment? We've always at Afreximbank taken the view that foreign direct investment is good. This is investment from outside the continent. But what is normally forgotten is the concept of Africa direct investment, which we basically call ADI. So at Afreximbank, we over the years have actually been working on a framework on how to mobilize Africa direct investment. We have actually developed a methodology on how to measure that Africa direct investment, and we use that to actually identify some of the barriers to Africa direct investment and put interventions to address some of those barriers. Some of the issues have a lot to do with financing. And at Afreximbank, we have now developed specific tools that are tailor-made to support and facilitate Africa direct investment. For example, we have the Intra-African Trade Finance Investment Facility, which will provide an Egyptian investor, for example, the finance, the support that they need to be able to invest in South Africa. Afreximbank will also provide the relevant guarantees for an investor in Egypt to invest in South Africa, and will actually ensure that the investor is also protected. There is also a range of tools that we have developed. You may be aware of the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, which will actually facilitate trade in local currencies. And it may even facilitate somebody sitting in South Africa to be able to buy stocks on the Egyptian Stock Exchange using the South African Rand. We've also developed a range of project finance guarantees, which will ensure that the key projects that we are trying to facilitate in other countries are actually protected. And most importantly, we actually presented an important initiative which we call the EPC initiative, which is basically an initiative that is supporting all the players in the engineering, procurement, value chain, and construction to ensure that they are put at an equal footing when they are competing with other investors from outside Africa. And Afreximbank has actually provided financing support as well as a portal for tenders to be posted for all the African investors to see the construction opportunities that are there. We have actually already provided support to the tune of about 13 billion US dollars to support African EPC contractors to be able to do business in Africa, to invest in Africa. So we've got a range of tools that we're actually using to support Africa direct investment to take place.
Now, from the 4th to the 10th of September later on this year, Afreximbank will be hosting the Intra-African Trade Fair 2025, and this year it's being hosted in Algeria. So besides exploring the opportunities presented by Africa's $3.5 trillion market, what else is it that people of Algeria should be looking forward to, as well as the rest of the continent?
That's great. I think this is my favorite topic, the Intra-African Trade Fair. It's you may recall that this is an initiative that was actually started by our founding fathers in 1963. They called for us to actually organize trade fairs. And Afreximbank, with our capacity and financial muscle, we have been organizing the Intra-African Trade Fair since 2018. And you're right, the next edition is taking place in Algeria. All roads are already leading to Algeria. There has been a lot of interest that has been expressed by countries, the business people, including the SMEs. And the key benefits of participating in the trade fair is that both for the host country, Algeria, and other African countries, is the trade fair offers that sustainable platform for buyers and sellers to exchange trade and market information and explore investment opportunities. It's also a big platform that will actually allow African countries to bring their investment opportunities, building on what we've been doing here in Egypt under Focus Africa. The IATF is actually a bigger platform which will actually lead to conclusion of practical deals that will contribute towards the implementation of the AFCFTA. We are actually targeting 44 billion US dollars at the trade fair. And in the previous edition, you may be aware that in Egypt, in 2023, we did about $43.7 billion. So we are confident that all those that are coming to Algeria will be able to actually benefit. We are inviting exhibitors, we are inviting sponsors, we are inviting the key delegates to actually come, and countries from Africa, all the 55 African countries, as well as those from outside Africa, those that really support the continental agenda, the AFCFTA. We are inviting them to come to Algeria,
and I'm sure
Algeria is the host.
And I'm sure Dr. Gainmore, that they certainly will. I mean, this has become one of those calendar go-to gatherings. We thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure all of Africa looking forward to the Afreximbank, Intra-African Trade Fair 2025 taking place in Algeria this year from the 4th to the 10th of September. We thank you, Dr. Gainmore Zanamwe, for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you in Algeria as well.
Oh, it would be awesome. Thank you, Doctor. He is the Director for Trade Facilitation and Investment Promotion at Afreximbank.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
It is exactly 24 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time now. As South Africa builds up for the G20 summit coming up in November, various working groups are continuing to meet in preparation. Topping the agenda for the second development working group on planning, monitoring and evaluation was illicit financial flows and bridging the financial gap for achieving the sustainable development goals. The G20 Development Working Group nations were also urged to come up with tangible solutions to fight against illicit financial flows. Joining us this afternoon on the outcomes of the second G20 Development Working Group on Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation meeting, we're joined this afternoon by Marupini Ramakgopa, who is South Africa's Minister in the Presidency responsible for planning, monitoring and evaluation. A very good afternoon to you, Minister. Good to have you with us. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me.
So the issue of illicit financial flows is certainly not something new. Even at the African Union, this has been tackled for a while, and it still continues to be tackled. What would you say are some of the suggestions or solutions that have been put forward to enable G20 countries and the rest of Africa really to tackle illicit cash flows?
Good evening, and thank you very much for really having us and allowing us to really talk about the illicit financial flows that have really become a source of a worry and concern, precisely because they don't only deal with the issues of corruption, but they also take away the revenue base of countries, most especially African countries that are developing countries. As a result, once you don't have a revenue base, you are unable to mobilize enough resources to deal with developmental goals and other goals that we may have set out for ourselves. Some of the things that have been put in place is that there should be a cooperation between countries whereby a framework will be developed so that countries can have an agreement on how to deal with these flows, most especially flows that come from developing countries such as the countries that are in Africa. So we really do believe that after this G20 in December, where our leaders will be meeting at a summit, we would have a declaration that we can be able to monitor if there is changes as it relates to how countries work together, cooperating to deal with the illicit financial flows. That would then now allow us to be able to deal with resource mobilization domestically in our countries, most especially in the developing countries in Africa.
And what would you highlight as some of the loopholes that have been identified that make illicit financial flows possible, as well as the impacts that they're having on the economies of the continent?
Some of the loopholes, of course, are the regulations that are supposed to be guiding the revenue services of different countries to be able to track illicit financial flows. Because once you don't have strengthened institutions to deal with that, you are not going to be able to deal properly with what needs to be done. For example, if SARS does not have what it needs, especially as it relates to the tools to be able to deal with illicit financial flows, or at least the issues that has to do with revenue that the country should be able to get, we are then now going to face situations such as this one. In other countries, the policies that are in place are not necessarily allowing countries to be able to deal with the illicit financial flows. But in most developed countries, it is just a matter of ensuring that we align ourselves with the AI and other institutional development that are in the IT services to give us that strength to be able to deal with issues that has to do with corruption and illicit financial flow, because they have most of all have to do with us not being able to raise the revenue base that we need in order for us to fund our developmental goals.
So as ministries, you set out goals in line with the G20 theme, which is solidarity, equality and sustainability. How key is your department in ensuring that you do, in fact, stay on track and you do achieve those set goals?
Remember that our department deals with planning, monitoring and evaluation. As a result, the tools that will be utilized to monitor if G20 resolutions are actually happening will be happening from our department. For example, the G20, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that are the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. It is actually our country my department, our department, that actually do the monitoring and evaluation of how we are actually doing as a country, and the report thereof of South Africa is done by us. So even in this regard, the report of South Africa in particular, as it relates to this particular matter of the working group on development, will be done by ourselves. And we do have what it takes, because we are already monitoring and evaluating and assessing performance of our own government. As a result, the agreement that will come out of the G20, we will then now play a bigger role, not only in our country, but also in the working group itself, in order to ensure that what was agreed upon is actually something that we can be able to assess, but is also measurable.
And we're left with 5 years now to meet the SDGs. How far are we in actually achieving all the set goals?
We really haven't been doing so well, because last year when we received a report for the entire globe, only 17% of the SDGs were actually reached. And it is for this reason that the UN has actually called upon G20 and many other multilateral institutions to deal with the issue of development for finance. So ourselves as well in the G20, as it relates to this working group, we have included the issue of financing for development, because if we don't have clear line and clear programs that can be measurable, that will deal with financing for development, we will not be able to move. However, we really do believe that by the next coming 5 years, if the issue of the financing for development is dealt with the agility that it deserves, we are going to be able to at least talk about 70% of the attainment of the SDGs.
Well, we thank you so much for your time this afternoon and that update as the G20 gets underway, at least all the special meetings in preparation for the big G20 meeting at the end of the year. We thank you very much for your insight this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's South Africa's Minister in the Presidency responsible for planning, monitoring and evaluation, Marubeni Ramakgopa, taking us to exactly 4:30 Central African time as we head over to the markets desk, where Chanduko Lugege has the latest market indicators.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality and sustainability. Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Thami. These are your financial indicators this afternoon. $1 is trading at 18 Rand 89 in South Africa. In Botswana, 13 Pula 71. In Namibia, 18 Namibian dollars 89. Zambia, 28 kwacha 28 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 766. Ethiopia 132 bih 648. Uganda 3,000 shilling 646. Tanzania 2,000 shilling 678. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 603. In Egypt, the dollar is at 51 Egyptian pound 2. Tunisia 2 dinar 98. Algeria 131 dinar 849. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 90 ram 22. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza. The Congolese franc is at 2,850 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,326, platinum at $959 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $66.68 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Standing by for your latest sporting news, here is Musibudi Makura.
Thank you so much, Thami. It's a story, obviously, we are watching very closely, and it also gripped the attention of, a lot of people back home in South Africa. SABC Sport last week reporting that Wydad Casablanca head coach Thami Ngubeni, along with his technical bench, have not been paid their salaries since their arrival in Morocco 8 months ago. So let's speak now to the man that broke that story on sabcsport.com, Mazola Molefe, who's also the senior sports reporter at SABC, joining us here from Johannesburg to help us dissect the story. A very good afternoon to you, Mazola, and thank you so much for your time this afternoon on Channel Africa. I guess I have to ask, how much is due to Thami Ngubeni?
Good afternoon, Rachel. I don't have the figures, but I've seen some leaked documents showing that at least the staff, that's Alan Fries and Snetemba Badela and one or two more, have been paid, and it shows that they were in arrears for over 7 months. And what I saw, it looks like Alan Fries was owed about a million rand or so. So you do the maths, divide that by 7, and you probably get a round figure of what the coach is earning. But in that leaked document, Coach Rulani's name was not on there, but his agent has since confirmed that there's part of the salary owed to the coach that's been paid, but it's not all of it, that I can tell you for sure.
All right. And the reaction, though, from Wydad Casablanca, the management of the team, regarding the story that you broke last week, what have they said in reaction to the coach and at least the technical bench also being owed some monies?
Yeah, well, I mean, the final decision now is that the coach will be leaving. I'm assuming with the rest of his technical staff, because he brought them, as we know, only one of the members of staff for Coach Thami Ngubeni is actually from Morocco. The rest are the people that he recruited himself, along with his representatives to go to the Botola Premier League along with him. He's now got 4 games left after the Casablanca derby between Wydad and Raja over the past weekend. So the coach is effectively leaving. Where he goes from there, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But unfortunately, his dream of facing his idol Pep Guardiola in the FIFA Club World Cup will no longer be realized, because the coach will leave before the Club World Cup.
Well, that's unfortunate, because he was absolutely looking forward to the Club FIFA World Cup later on this year. I wonder, Mazola, with the information that you have gathered, what boggles my mind, though, about the story is that this is a Wydad Casablanca side that spent a lot of money buying players. I think they've bought about 31 players before the campaign started, during the transfer window in January. How is it that as much as they've bought players, they've also failed to pay coaches? How does that make sense? Because I'm trying to understand it, but it's not making sense.
Well, if you look back at their history, they've been in and out of the FIFA tribunals for either owing players or owing previous coaches. And what has happened is that FIFA has then in the past slapped them with transfer bans. And in fact, when Coach Rulani agreed to move to Morocco as their head coach, they were still under a FIFA ban, but at the time he'd been given guarantees that they would pay the money owed and lift the ban so he could sign players. If you recall, part of the reason why Coach Thami Ngubeni ended up signing a new squad entirely is because the previous team that finished 6th on the table actually left. All the players, the majority, if not all the players, in fact, left the club as free agents because they were owed money that the club could not pay. But before Coach Rulani was appointed, there was a new president installed at the club, and the vision here was that he would sort of change things around, and obviously that's why Coach Thami Ngubeni agreed, because he had hunted Coach Thami Ngubeni, but not as rosy as he perhaps thought initially. 8-9 months later, hence he's now probably headed back to South Africa, or could find another opportunity on the continent.
As we wrap up this conversation, Mazola, is this issue likely to go to FIFA? I mean, as much as you've said that, part of the monies have been paid to, the technical bench, is Thami Ngubeni likely to take this issue to FIFA, because it's likely going to be a legal issue? There was a breach of contract on the side of Wydad Casablanca. What happens to him now?
My understanding was that his representatives had actually prepared summons to send to FIFA to try and claim this money, but the coach stopped them because he felt like it was too early. He felt as though the situation would work itself out and he would get paid initially. But obviously, with the backlash of drawing some games and losing some games from the fans, it lands us here where initially the story eventually came out that the coach had been owed money. If by the time he leaves the door in Morocco at the end of the season after those 4 matches, there's still some outstanding money, you can rest assured that his lawyer will be taking the matter to the world governing body for sure.
Mazola Molefe, thank you so much for your time this afternoon on Channel Africa. SABC Sports senior reporter, just telling us about exactly what is happening there at Wydad Casablanca. Money's owed to Rolando Mokoena as well as his technical bench, and what is likely to happen now should by the time he leaves the club, all that money is not paid in time. So that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Do continue to engage with us on all the various social media platforms. On X, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1, as well as Instagram and YouTube. That 1 is the numerical value 1. On Facebook, you'll find us at Channel Africa. If you've got any stories that you'd like to share, stories that you believe would be of interest to our listeners, both on the African continent and in the diaspora, do send us your story leads to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, you can call us on +27 11 714 4459.
Channel Africa, #1 with information worldwide.
Now, Mauritius Commercial Bank Group has released an in-depth report titled Harnessing Africa's Trade Potential, Strategies for Sustainable Growth. The report highlights Africa's trade opportunities, which are left untapped, and it also shows the ineffectiveness that hampers intra-African trade, which still only accounts for 16% of the continent's total trade. The CEO of Mauritius Commercial Bank, Thierry Hebrond, says Africa's trade potential is tangible and can be achieved with the right financial solutions. He joins us now. A very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us on Africa in Business.
Very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for this call.
No, certainly. So the big question is, how do we harness Africa's trade potential, and what are some of the barriers that have made this a challenge?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what I would like to comment is the current evolution of the environment in which we are. And as you know, U.S. has recently, I would say, is transforming our world. If I take the recent tariff measures and the impact on African countries, 47 out of 54 African countries have been placed under the high tariff by U.S. And that would result, if applied, in a significant reduction in exports and in foreign exchange availability. What I consider and what we consider in our report is that, as you were introducing, the intra-trade Africa is, for the time being, not developing as it should be. And this is really a pity, because Africa has a lot of strength and capacity to improve tremendously and to concentrate on itself instead of being dependent of international buyers. Today, if I want to simplify it, I would say Africa is an exporter of raw material and an importer of finished products. As you said, 16% only of African trade is within the continent. So what I believe Africa should move on is to increase, first of all, its collaborative efforts between African nations and international partners and organizations. These are crucial in driving the knowledge transfer, the technological advancement, and infrastructure development. Secondly, Africa should reduce trade barriers inside of the continent to simplify and harmonize tariff barriers inside Africa. Third, investment and infrastructure. This is a priority if we want the African country to move from raw materials to finished products and to be part of the solution. I think that the other topic which is important to support the development of Africa trade is to support financially the SME sector. Today, there is an enormous gap in terms of capacity of financing, which is estimated around $80 to $120 billion annually, and we need to find solutions to support the access to the financial. I think that at the same time, what Africa is suffering is probably still in some areas political instability, and that's work to be done. And that for me, these are the major constraints and topics where Africa needs to develop itself.
Certainly, you have lauded the African Continental Free Trade Area on the role that they're playing in promoting regional integration and also encouraging intra-African trade. But I wonder, are they the sole instrument that Africa is looking to facilitate trade on the continent?
I think the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is an important facilitator of developing the intra-trade Africa, but it's not applied as it should be. I think that the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement could, if implemented fully, could boost intra-Africa trade by 52%. So
and maybe let's look into that just a little bit. So you're saying it's not being maximized. What would you advise needs to be done in order to increase its efficiency and its maximum implementation?
I think that it should facilitate, when you look at, I think it is not enough used by the countries, but where it is used, and I take some example like the implementation between Rwanda export to Kenya, for example, in the agriculture and manufacturing sector. This is representing a very strong growth of export to Kenya from Rwanda by 42% over the last 2 years. If you take, despite the tension between Ghana and Nigeria, the development of bilateral trade between the two countries, particularly manufactured goods, has allowed the trade between the two countries to increase by 20% in the last 2-3 years as well. So I think these are. It's a question of political decision to apply and to work with neighboring countries and other countries of the continent. So that's really what for me is needed to be implemented and to make it efficient. At the same time, I think I was telling about that the continent needs to improve substantially its infrastructure and the connectivity between the countries. The deficit in terms of financing in infrastructure is estimated between $130 to $170 billion, and that's an enormous effort which is to be done. I was speaking about the financing of the SME sector. It's part of it as well.
I'd like us for a moment to speak about the recent global developments as far as foreign policy is concerned in international relations with the U.S. President Donald Trump. He initially imposed a 40% tariff on Mauritius. Looking at this scenario, how can Mauritius, as well as the rest of the continent, learn from this as the continent seeks alternative trade markets?
Yeah, this is exactly what I was telling. Why do we depend on tariffs by U.S.? Why don't we use our own capacity, our own resources to develop our intra-production and be independent from the orders coming from U.S., I would say coming from China or Europe as well, because we are out of capacity. At the same time, and for Mauritius, if I take the case of Mauritius, indeed this 40% would impact our textile sector essentially, which is the one exporting to U.S. But is it the end of the world? No. I think that we have other capacity to develop more production in our own country, and we can review our international relationship and withdraw from this dependency of U.S. At the same time, Africa, if I take the continent, we are a major extractor of special materials, rare earths, which are needed for this transition of the continent, or the transition of the planet to the electrification of the planet. And we are representing 30% of the cobalt, of all these metals and materials. And today, what we are doing, we are exporting these materials as a raw material. If we would transform it, that would create much more wealth within the countries, and instead of exporting tons of materials, we would export at a much higher price a limited number of metals transformed, and that would be effectively a real transformation.
Certainly, lessons to be learned, but I'm sure you'll agree with me that these are conversations that have been had within the continent for decades now, and with external forces pushing the countries now to try and find and establish alternative trade routes. We thank you very much for your insight and your contribution this afternoon, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. That's Thierry Hebrand. He is the CEO of Mauritius Commercial Bank. He takes us to exactly 4:52.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons accueillir sur ces plateaux de Mix Vibration un artiste pas comme les autres. Il est exceptionnel. Il se classe résolument dans la trajectoire des artistes qui défendent le patrimoine du folklore africain, mais aussi de la rumba. Ici, Jérémy Tchani.
En tout cas, je vous dis merci à la Channel Africa, à tout le monde qui nous suit. Dans la vie, si tu veux aller loin, il faut comprendre les temps. Il y a ceux-là qui étaient dans leur temps, mais à cause d'une mauvaise conduite, à cause des gens qui l'accompagnaient, à cause de sa famille, à cause beaucoup de choses, son temps passé.
Voilà, donc il faut toujours gérer le temps. Chaque chose a son temps, dit-on. Et la couronne ne dure pas éternellement, dit-on. Donc il faut toujours gérer le temps que Dieu vous a donné sur la terre. C'est le message que Jérémy Tchani nous amène aujourd'hui sur Mix Vibration à Channel Africa.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwena@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 4:53 Central African time for a look at the latest business and financial market developments in the East African markets. We're joined this afternoon by Mered Fikri-Johannes, founder and CEO of Pragma Investment Advisory. Good to have you with us once again, Mered. A very good afternoon to you.
Very good afternoon to you too. Pleasure to be on the show as always.
So perhaps let's start first with Kenya. It's still dealing with its tea troubles. Nairobi looking to lift a ban on its tea exports to Iran. Could you tell us about the impact of that, and at least a bit of background of that?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes, it seems to be like, it seems to be Kenya is facing a bit of a problem in terms of Nairobi is looking to lift this ban on tea export to Iran as the government tries to look to diversify green leaves. So it is something that we're going to be seeing in a couple of weeks.
In the next couple of weeks, and has this impact been actually felt on the ground, and have the markets reacted in any way?
Yes, I mean we can see that there is a price movement on the ground. But we can see that like the market is looking into it very closely, and the market is very concerned about it.
So let's perhaps take a look at developments in Ethiopia. We see here that the National Bank of Ethiopia announcing the results of the foreign exchange auction that was held today. How did that go?
Yes. So, actually, the announcement just came in almost a couple of hours ago. So the final announcement it came around 131 birr. It came around 131 birr and 49 cents. So the auction was conducted earlier today, and 26 banks have been involved in it. And the total auction amount was $70 million, and almost all of it, 96% of the banks have taken the forex, and it shows that birr is getting stronger as opposed to compared to the last two auctions where the auction fetched $1 to a birr was around 135 birr. So this is the third round of auction, and this third round of auction shows the intention from the central bank is to pump as much as of dollar and foreign currency into the market, and then to stabilize birr. Because what we're seeing on the ground is what you get on the bank daily exchange rate is, however, is 129 birr or 130 birr. But however, on the para market, the birr goes up to 150 birr, and then if you go to the bank will charge you commission rates of 10%, sometimes up to 12%. So somehow it's distorting the value of birr, and the central bank wants to assure to the market that there is continuous supplies of foreign currency, and this auction is going to continue on a bi-weekly basis up until the end of June. So the central bank intention here is wants to stabilize birr. It wants to stabilize the foreign currency exchange market. And then moreover, I think almost a month ago, the governor came in. The governor is going to take a strong corrective measures against some of the banks which are charging astronomical commission fees, because it is highly distorting birr. So it is something that we'll be seeing, but it seems that this intervention is working. And more importantly, I think one thing to notice is the first auction they conducted was around $30 million, and then they go up to $50 million, and last one was $60 million, and this one
is sitting at 70.
$70 million.
So it certainly does seem to be an improvement there, and as you said, bi-weekly for the next, in the next 2 weeks there will be yet another one. Thank you so much for that update, Mered. Very much appreciated. You have yourself a splendid evening further.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Mered Fikri-Johannes, founder and CEO of Pragma Investment Advisory. And that brings us to the end of Africa in Business for this afternoon. From myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the entire team at Africa in Business, you have yourself a splendid evening forward. Coming up next is Joël and Vue d'Afrique.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Ouais, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup